The human sat beside the weeping cub by morning it slept holding her hand. Part 1. The alarm came at 300 hours. Sarah Chen was 3 hours into her sleep cycle when the sharp sound cut through her dreams. She sat up in the darkness of her cabin, her heart racing. The red emergency lights were flashing along the walls. She pulled on her uniform and ran to the bridge. The corridors of the Meridian's Hope were quiet except for the sound of her boots against the metal floor. Other crew members were already moving, but everyone was silent. An emergency at this hour meant something serious. Captain Rodriguez was standing at the main console when Sarah entered. His face was lit by the blue glow of the screens. He looked tired. He always looked tired these days. "Chen, good. You're here." He pointed at a screen. "We picked up a signal. Very faint. Coming from the asteroid field ahead." Sarah moved closer to look. The signal was weak, but it was there. A pattern. Not natural. Someone had made it. Someone was calling for help. "How old is it?" she asked. The communications officer, Lieutenant Park, shook his head. "The computer says it's ancient. Maybe 200 years. Maybe more. 200 years. Sarah felt a chill. That was before humans had left their solar system. Before they had met any other species. Before everything changed. "Can you identify the language?" Captain Rodriguez asked. Park typed on his console. "The AI is working on it. Wait." "It says Vrelnari." Everyone on the bridge became very still. Sarah knew why. The Vrelnari were extinct. Everyone knew this. They had died out in a war 2 centuries ago. Their whole species gone. There were no Vrelnari left anywhere in the galaxy. "That's impossible," someone whispered. "The signal is real," Park said. "It's definitely Vrelnari. It's a distress call. It's asking for help." Captain Rodriguez looked at Sarah. "How dangerous is that asteroid field?" Sarah checked her screens. "Not too bad. We can send a shuttle. It will be slow, but it's safe enough." "I don't like this," the first officer said. "That signal is 200 years old. Whatever sent it is dead. We should report it and move on." The captain was quiet for a long moment. Sarah watched him. She knew he was thinking about regulations, about safety, about the mission. But she also knew something else about Captain Rodriguez. He had been a rescue pilot before he commanded ships. He couldn't ignore a distress call. "Prepare a shuttle," he said finally. "Small team. Chen, you'll pilot. Take Martinez and Okoye with you. Find that ship. See if there's anything left." 2 hours later, Sarah was guiding the shuttle through the asteroid field. The rocks were huge and dark. They floated in the emptiness like sleeping giants. The shuttle's lights made strange shadows as they moved. Martinez sat behind her watching the sensors. Okoye was checking their equipment. Nobody talked much. There was something heavy in the air. Something sad. "There," Martinez said suddenly. Dead ahead, Sarah saw it, a ship. It was caught between 2 asteroids, held there like a fly in a web. The hull was old and damaged. Parts of it were missing, but she could still see the design. It was beautiful even now. The Vrelnari had built beautiful things. She brought the shuttle close and docked. They put on their suits and entered the alien ship. Inside, everything was dead. The corridors were dark and cold. Their helmet lights made circles on the walls. Sarah could see writing in a language she didn't know, pictures of creatures that looked almost human, but not quite. They had large eyes and soft features. They looked gentle. "Life support failed decades ago," Okoye said, reading her scanner. "Nothing could survive here." They moved deeper into the ship. Every room was the same, empty, dead, cold. Then they found the chamber. It was a large room filled with glass containers. Preservation pods. Sarah counted them. 20, 30. More. Each one had a body inside. Vrelnari, frozen in time. Families, maybe. People who had tried to escape. Who had hoped to wake up somewhere safe. They were refugees, Martinez said softly. Running from the war. Sarah felt tears in her eyes. She blinked them away. Every pod was dark. Every pod was failed, except one. In the corner, a single pod still had a green light. Weak but glowing. Sarah ran to it. Inside was a child. A Vrelnari child, small, maybe 5 years old. The child's eyes were closed. Its chest was moving, breathing, alive. "Oh my God," Okoye whispered. Sarah's hands were shaking. "We need to open it now. The power is almost gone." Martinez was already working on the controls. I don't know how this works. I might hurt. Do it, Sarah said. It's dying anyway. We have to try, the pod hissed. The lid opened. The child inside didn't move. Sarah reached in carefully. The child was so small, so light. She lifted it out. Its fur was soft under her gloved hands. Its face was peaceful, then its eyes opened. They were huge and dark. The child looked at Sarah. Then it looked around at the dead ship, at the failed pods, at the strangers in suits, and it began to cry. The sound was terrible. It was the sound of someone who had lost everything, the sound of being completely alone. The child cried and cried. It made high chirping sounds mixed with deep sobs. Its whole small body shook. Sarah held it close. It's okay, she said, even though she knew the child couldn't understand. You're safe now. I've got you. But the child only cried harder. It was afraid. Afraid of these strange creatures in their hard suits. Afraid of being awake and alone. We need to get back to the ship, Okoye said. It needs medical help. They carried the child back to the shuttle. All the way, it cried. Sarah held it and whispered soft words. Nothing helped. The child was lost in its fear and grief. Back on the Meridian's Hope, Dr. Yuki examined the child. The whole medical bay heard the crying. It was a sound that made everyone stop and listen. It made them sad. It's a male, Dr. Yuki said. About 5 years old by their growth patterns, malnourished, traumatized, but alive. Will he survive? Captain Rodriguez asked. I don't know. He won't let me near him. He screams when anyone approaches, except... Dr. Yuki looked at Sarah. Except you. It was true. When Sarah had put the child down, it had reached for her. When she stepped away, it cried harder. When she came close, it stopped. It just stared at her with those huge dark eyes. What's your recommendation? The captain asked the doctor. Chen stays with him, at least for tonight. We need to stabilize him. Then we can contact the Galactic Concordance. They'll know what to do with the last Nari. The last Nari. The words hit Sarah like a weight. This child was the last. The only one. The last member of an entire species. I'll stay, Sarah said quietly. That night, Sarah sat in the medical bay with the child. They had given him a name, Cree. It was the closest human sound to what they thought his species might have called young ones. Cree sat in the corner of the room, crying. His whole body shook. He wouldn't eat. He wouldn't drink. He wouldn't let anyone touch him. But when Sarah sat down slowly on the floor away from him, he stopped crying for a moment. He watched her. Sarah didn't move. She just sat. Then very quietly she began to hum. It was an old song her mother had sung to her. A lullaby from Earth. Cree's crying became softer. He was listening. Sarah kept humming. She didn't look at him directly. She just hummed and looked at her hands. After a long time, she heard a small sound. Cree was moving. Coming closer, she kept humming. Kept still. Cree came closer. Closer. Until he was right beside her. Then, very carefully, he touched her hand with his small paw. Sarah looked down. 3 small fingers wrapped around one of hers. Cree was looking up at her. His eyes were full of tears, but he had stopped crying. It's okay, Sarah whispered. You're not alone. I promise, you're not alone. Cree made a soft sound. Not a cry. Something else. Something that sounded like hope. And somewhere in that dark medical bay surrounded by the stars, 2 beings from different worlds found each other. 1 human. 1 alien, both lost, both afraid, both alone, but together, they were something more. Darkness held Sarah for a long time. Sometimes she heard sounds. Water dripping, soft chirping, deep rumbles that made the ground shake, but she could not wake up. The fever had her in its grip. Her dreams were full of strange images, glowing lights that danced in patterns, huge eyes watching her, gentle touches on her burning skin. She dreamed of her mother's hands when she was sick as a child. Cool and careful, but these hands had claws. Slowly, very slowly, the fever broke. Sarah became aware of her body again. She was lying on something soft. Her leg no longer screamed with pain. She felt weak but clean. Someone had taken care of her. She opened her eyes. The tent above her glowed with soft morning light. She turned her head carefully. Her medical kit lay open beside her, supplies neatly arranged. Her water bottle was full. Strange plants she did not recognize sat in a pile nearby. Something warm pressed against her side. Sarah looked down and her breath caught. The 3 cubs were curled up next to her. They slept peacefully, their scales rising and falling with each breath. The one with the splinted leg had its head resting on her arm. Sarah tried to sit up. Her body protested but obeyed. The cubs woke immediately, their crystalline eyes opening wide. They made happy chirping sounds and pressed closer to her. Their scales flashed with colors that seemed to express joy. She checked her leg wound carefully. Someone had changed the bandage. The wound was clean and showed no signs of infection. Her other injuries had been cleaned too. She stared at the neat bandaging in shock. How was this possible? Sarah crawled to the tent opening and looked outside. What she saw made her freeze. 2 massive creatures sat outside her tent. They were clearly the adult versions of the cubs. Each one was the size of a small car. 6 powerful legs ended in razor claws. Their heads were broad and strong, built for crushing. Scales covered their bodies in overlapping plates that glowed with complex patterns of light. They should have been terrifying. They were terrifying, but they were not attacking. They sat like guards watching the jungle around them. One turned its huge head towards Sarah. Its eyes were the same crystalline shape as the cubs, but much larger. Intelligent eyes that studied her carefully. Sarah held very still. The creature made a deep rumbling sound. Not angry, almost questioning. The cubs chirped back from inside the tent. The adult's eyes softened in a way Sarah would not have thought possible for a predator. She looked around her camp with new understanding. Someone had brought her things. Parts of her ship that she could not have carried lay nearby. Her scanner, more medical supplies, useful tools. The adults had done this. Near the tent entrance sat something even more surprising. Hollowed-out plant pods filled with clean water and meat. Carefully prepared pieces of some animal with the bones and organs removed. The adults had brought her food and water. They were keeping her alive. Because she had saved their young. Sarah's scientific mind raced. This level of behavior was remarkable. These creatures showed problem-solving skills. They used tools. They understood cause and effect. They recognized that she had helped their cubs and responded with gratitude and care. She reached for her scanner with slow, careful movements. The adults watched but did not move to stop her. She turned it on and aimed it at them. The results made her hands shake. The scanner showed brain complexity far beyond any non-intelligent species she had studied. They had organized social structures, complex communication systems. They made and used tools. All the markers of sapience were there. She was not alone on this planet with animals. She was with people. A different kind of people, but people nonetheless. Intelligent beings who had just saved her life. The cubs pushed past her and bounded outside. They ran to the adults, who greeted them with gentle rumbles and careful nuzzles. The injured cub moved more slowly, still favoring its splinted leg. One of the adults examined the splint carefully, then looked at Sarah with what seemed like approval. Sarah ate the food they had brought. Her body needed strength. The meat was strange but tasted fine. She drank the water gratefully. The adults watched her eat, their scales pulsing with soft colors. Over the next few days, a routine developed. The cubs stayed with Sarah most of the time. They seemed to have adopted her as a third parent. She started giving them names in her mind. The one that always copied her movements became Echo. The careful, watchful one was Shadow. The injured one with the bright, expressive scale patterns was Bright. The adults she called Sentinel and Guardian. They took turns watching over the camp. One always stood guard while the other hunted or gathered supplies. They brought Sarah everything she needed. Sometimes they brought interesting objects from her crashed ship, as if asking if she needed them. Sarah began to study the light patterns on their scales. At first she thought they were just emotional expressions. But as she watched more carefully, she realized the truth. The patterns were language, a visual communication system more complex than anything humans had developed. She spent hours watching and recording. The cubs were patient teachers. When she tried to copy a pattern with her handheld light, they would chirp with excitement or correct her gently. Echo was especially helpful, repeating patterns slowly so she could learn. Simple concepts came first: food, water, danger, safety. The cubs seemed delighted that she was trying to learn their language. They brought her things and showed her the patterns for each object. Sarah's leg healed slowly but well. Bright's leg healed too. After 2 weeks, she carefully removed the splint. The cub tested the leg, then jumped and ran in circles, its scales flashing with pure joy. It came back and pressed its head against Sarah's chest in what she now understood was gratitude. One morning, Sarah woke to an electronic beeping sound. Her emergency beacon. It was working. She crawled to where the adults had brought it from the ship. The power cell had somehow reset. A rescue signal was transmitting help was coming. She should have felt relief. Instead, she felt fear. The cubs sensed her distress. They gathered around her, their scales showing patterns of concern. Sarah held them close, her heart breaking. What would happen when humans arrived? Would they see intelligent beings or just animals? Would they try to capture them? Study them, hurt them? These people had saved her life. They had shown her kindness and trust. She could not let anyone harm them. Sarah made a decision. She had to prepare them. She had to teach them about humans and what was coming. She had to gather as much evidence as possible of their intelligence. When rescue came, she would fight for them. She would make sure the galaxy knew what they truly were. The cubs brought her a gift that afternoon. It was a flower from the jungle, carefully preserved in tree sap. Bright carried it in its mouth and laid it at her feet. Such a simple gesture. Such a universal expression of affection. Sarah picked up the flower and cried. These were not animals. They were children who loved her. A family who had accepted her as one of their own. She would protect them, no matter what came. The human sat beside the weeping cub. By morning it slept, holding her hand part. 3 morning came too quickly. Sarah woke to find Cree already awake. He was looking out the window at the stars. His expression was sad. Good morning, Sarah said softly. Cree turned to her. Good morning, Sarah. His human words were getting better every day. Today is the day? Sarah's chest tightened. He knew. Somehow he understood that something was going to change today. Yes, she said. She would not lie to him. Some people are coming. They want to meet you. They take Cree away from Sarah? Sarah pulled him close. I won't let that happen without a fight. The Concordance ship arrived at noon. It was huge and white. It made the Meridian's hope look small. Captain Rodriguez called Sarah to the bridge. They're requesting permission to board, he said. They want to see Cree immediately. Sarah stood with Cree holding her hand. The whole crew was watching. Everyone knew what this meant. Let them board, Sarah said. Her voice was steady. But they see us both. Together, 2 officials came aboard. The first was a Zeth, a tall insect-like species with cold eyes. His name was Administrator Vex. The second was a Miran, more human-like, with kind features. Her name was Counselor Mira. They were taken to the observation room. Cree and Sarah stood on one side of the glass. The officials stood on the other side. Administrator Vex studied Cree like he was looking at an interesting rock. Remarkable, he said. The last Vrelnari, in perfect condition. He's not a specimen, Sarah said sharply. He's a child. He is both, Vex replied. And he belongs to the Concordance. Under preservation law, all extinct species must be protected by us. We have the resources, the expertise, the facilities. Counselor Mira stepped forward. She looked at Cree with softer eyes. Hello, little one, she said gently. Cree pressed against Sarah. He didn't speak. He's bonded with Navigator Chen, Dr. Yuki said. She had brought all her research. Vrelnari young form chemical bonds with caregivers. Breaking this bond could cause serious harm. Our facilities can manage such transitions, Vex said dismissively. We have experience with traumatized specimens. He will adjust. He is not a specimen. Sarah's voice rose. He is a person. He has feelings. He has needs. Navigator Chen. Captain Rodriguez put a hand on her shoulder. Let's stay calm. Counselor Mira was still watching Cree. May I speak with him? She asked. Sarah nodded. They brought the translator device. Mira spoke in Vrelnari through the machine. Cree's ears perked up. He listened, then he responded. The translator worked. I want to stay with Sarah. She is my family now. Mira's face softened even more. I understand. But Sarah has to work. She travels in space. That might be dangerous for you. Cree does not care about danger. Cree only cares about family. This is irrelevant, Vex said. The child's wishes do not override Concordance law. He will come with us today. No. Sarah stepped forward. You can't take him. I won't let you. You have no legal standing, Vex replied. You are a human. He is Vrelnari. You have no claim to him. I have a moral claim. I saved him. I cared for him. He trusts me. Morality is not law. Captain Rodriguez stepped forward. I would like to formally challenge this seizure. On behalf of Navigator Chen and Cree. Vex's eyes narrowed. On what grounds? On the grounds that separation would harm Cree. On the grounds that he has expressed a preference. On the grounds that Earth has its own history of forced separations. We know how much damage it causes. We will not be part of that again. The room was silent. Everyone stared at the captain. He had just challenged the Concordance. That was dangerous. It could cost him his command. His career, everything, but he didn't look afraid. He looked determined. Counselor Mira looked thoughtful. A formal challenge requires a hearing, evidence, testimony. Then we request a hearing, Captain Rodriguez said. Vex clicked his mandibles in irritation. This is a waste of time. The outcome is predetermined. Perhaps, Mira said quietly, but everyone deserves to be heard. Even humans. Even Vrelnari children. She looked at Vex. We will grant the hearing. 24 hours to prepare. Tomorrow we hear the case. After the officials left, the crew gathered around Sarah and Cree. Everyone was talking at once. Offering help. Offering ideas. We need a legal expert, Lieutenant Park said. We need precedents, Dr. Yuki added. We need a miracle, someone muttered. Captain Rodriguez held up his hand. We have 24 hours. Let's use them wisely. Park, search for any legal precedents. Anything about custody, about bonding, about the rights of extinct species. Yuki, compile all your medical data. Make it clear what separation would do to Cree. Martinez, look into concordance law. Find the loopholes. What about me? Sarah asked. You stay with Cree, keep him calm. Keep him safe, and get ready to tell your story tomorrow. That night, the crew worked without stopping. Sarah watched them from the medical bay. Everyone was helping. The cook brought food. The engineers ran data searches. Even the maintenance crew was looking through old law books. Why do they help? Cree asked. He was drawing again. This time he drew the whole crew, all of them together. Because they care, Sarah said. Because they know what's right. Because Cree is family. Sarah looked at Cree's drawing. He had drawn himself in the middle. Around him, all the crew members held hands. They made a circle. A family. Yes, she said. Because you're family. At midnight, Lieutenant Park burst into the medical bay. He was carrying a tablet. His eyes were bright with excitement. I found something, he said. It's old, very old. But it might work. He showed Sarah the screen. It was a law from centuries ago. Before the concordance became so powerful, it said that any member of a species could speak for their entire species in matters of cultural law. I don't understand, Sarah said. Cree is the last Vrelnari, Park explained. That makes him the only authority on Vrelnari culture. Vrelnari law, Vrelnari customs. If he says you can be his guardian under Vrelnari tradition, the concordance has to respect that. Sarah's heart raced. Will it work? I don't know. It's never been tested like this. But it's a chance. Captain Rodriguez came in. He had been awake for 20 hours. His eyes were red, but he was smiling. This could work, he said. It's risky. It's unprecedented. But it could work. They spent the rest of the night preparing. They built their case. They gathered evidence. They wrote arguments and they talked to Cree. Cree, Sarah said gently. Tomorrow you need to tell the officials what you want. You need to be brave. Can you do that? Cree looked up at her. He was so small, so young, but his eyes were old. They had seen too much loss. Too much pain. Cree can be brave, he said. For Sarah, for family. Sarah hugged him tightly. You are the bravest person I know. As dawn approached, Sarah sat with Cree and watched the stars. Tomorrow would decide everything. Tomorrow they would either stay together or be torn apart. Sarah? Cree whispered, yes. If Cree cannot stay with Sarah. Will Sarah remember Cree? Sarah felt tears on her face. I will never forget you, never, no matter what happens. Good. Cree nestled against her. Cree will never forget Sarah either. Sarah saved Cree. Sarah gave Cree family. Cree will remember forever. They sat together as the stars slowly turned. Two beings from different worlds. Two souls who had found each other in the vast darkness of space. Tomorrow they would fight. Tomorrow they would stand before the concordance and demand to be heard. Tomorrow they would show the galaxy what family really meant. But tonight, they just held each other. And hoped. The human sat beside the weeping cub. By morning it slept holding her hand. Part 4. The hearing room was cold and formal. It was on the Concordance ship in a chamber made of white metal and glass. Sarah walked in holding Kree's hand. The small Vrelnari looked around with wide eyes. On one side sat Administrator Vex and his team. They had stacks of documents. They looked confident. On the other side sat Counselor Mira and 2 other judges. They would decide Kree's fate. Captain Rodriguez stood with Sarah. Lieutenant Park and Dr. Yuki sat behind them. The rest of the crew watched from screens on the Meridian's Hope. Everyone wanted to see what happened. This hearing will now begin, Counselor Mira said. Her voice was calm but serious. We are here to determine the custody of the Vrelnari child known as Kree. Administrator Vex will present the Concordance position first. Vex stood. He was tall and imposing. The law is clear, he began. All extinct species fall under Concordance protection. We have facilities designed for this exact purpose. The child will receive medical care, education, and preservation of his genetic material. He will live in comfort and safety. In a cage, Sarah said quietly. Navigator Chen, you will have your turn to speak, Mira said gently. Vex continued. The human's attachment to the specimen is understandable but irrelevant. She is not qualified to care for an extinct species. She has no training, no resources, no legal standing. What about the bond? Captain Rodriguez asked. Dr. Yuki has documented the neurochemical attachment between Kree and Navigator Chen. Separation could cause permanent psychological damage. Our facilities are equipped to handle such transitions, Vex replied. We have specialists who deal with traumatized specimens regularly. He keeps calling Kree a specimen, Sarah said, her voice rising. He's not a specimen. He's a child. Navigator Chen. Mira's voice was firm but not unkind. Please wait your turn, Vex finished his presentation. He showed images of the preservation facility. It looked clean and modern, but it also looked empty, cold, like a museum, not a home. Navigator Chen, Mira said. You may present your case, Sarah stood. Her legs felt weak. Her heart was pounding. But she looked at Kree and he gave her a small, brave smile. That gave her strength. 6 days ago we found Kree on a dead ship, she began. He was the only survivor. He had been asleep for 200 years. When he woke up, everyone he knew was gone. His family, his people, everything. She took a breath. He was terrified. He cried for hours. He wouldn't eat, wouldn't let anyone near him. But slowly he began to trust me. He bonded with me. Not because I'm special, but because I was there. Because I stayed. That does not constitute legal guardianship, Vex interrupted. I'm not finished, Sarah said firmly. Kree has formed a bond with me. Dr. Yuki's research shows this. Breaking that bond would hurt him. Maybe permanently. The Concordance says they can handle it. But why should they have to? Why should Kree suffer more than he already has? Because the law requires it, Vex said. Then the law is wrong. Sarah's voice echoed in the chamber. The law shouldn't cause harm. It should prevent it. Kree doesn't need a facility. He needs a family. He needs love. He needs someone who sees him as a person, not a specimen. The room was silent. Mira leaned forward. You make a passionate argument, Navigator Chen. But Administrator Vex is correct. Passion is not law. Do you have any legal basis for your claim? Captain Rodriguez stood. We do. Lieutenant Park has found a precedent. Park stepped forward. He was nervous but determined. There is an old law, Article 47 of the original Concordance Charter. It states that any member of a species has the authority to speak for their entire species in matters of cultural law and tradition. What does that have to do with this case? Vex asked impatiently. Kree is the last Vrelnari, Park said. That makes him the only authority on Vrelnari culture. On Vrelnari customs. On Vrelnari family law. Mira's eyes widened. You're arguing that Kree can choose his own guardian under Vrelnari tradition? Exactly, Captain Rodriguez said. We researched Vrelnari culture. They valued family bonds above all else. They believed that family could be chosen, not just born. If Kree chooses Sarah as his family, that is a valid Vrelnari custom. And the Concordance must respect it. Vex stood quickly. This is absurd. The child is 5 years old. He cannot make such decisions. Why not? Sarah asked. You were going to take him away without asking what he wanted. At least let him speak. Let him tell you what he needs. Mira looked thoughtful. She turned to her fellow judges. They whispered together. Finally, she nodded. "We will hear from Cree," she said. "Bring the translation device." The device was brought in. Cree looked at it. Then he looked at Sarah. She knelt down beside him. "You can do this," she whispered. "Just tell them the truth." "Tell them what you feel," Cree nodded. He stepped forward. He looked so small standing in front of the judges, but he stood straight. He was brave. Mira spoke to him gently through the translator. "Hello, Cree. Do you understand why we are here?" Cree's voice came through the device. "Yes, you want to take Cree away from Sarah." "We want to take you somewhere safe," Mira said. "Somewhere you can be cared for properly." "Cree is safe with Sarah," he replied. "Sarah saved Cree. Sarah feeds Cree. Sarah holds Cree when Cree is scared. Sarah is Cree's family now." "But Sarah has to work," Mira said. "She travels in dangerous places. What if something happens to her? What if you get hurt?" Cree was quiet for a moment. Then he spoke. His words were clear and strong. "Cree's first family is gone. Cree's home is gone. Cree's people are gone. Everything is gone. Cree woke up alone in the dark. Cree was so scared. Cree wanted to die." Sarah felt tears on her cheeks. The whole room was silent. Then Sarah came, Cree continued. Sarah held Cree. Sarah sang to Cree. Sarah made Cree feel safe. Sarah gave Cree a reason to live. Sarah is not Vrelnari. But Sarah is Cree's family, the only family Cree has now. He turned to look at Sarah. Cree chooses Sarah forever. The room was absolutely still. Even Vex said nothing. Mira had tears in her eyes. "Thank you, Cree," she said softly. "You are very brave." Cree ran back to Sarah. She picked him up and held him tight. "The judges will discuss this matter," Mira said. "We will give our decision in 1 hour." The longest hour of Sarah's life began. She sat with Cree in a waiting room. The crew sent messages of support. Everyone was watching. Everyone was hoping. "Sarah?" Cree whispered. "Yes?" "Did Cree do good?" "You did perfect," Sarah said. "You were so brave, so strong. I'm proud of you." "If they take Cree away, Cree will always remember Sarah, always. And I will always remember you," Sarah said, "no matter what happens." Finally, they were called back. The judges sat in their places. Mira looked serious. "This has been a difficult decision," she began. "The law is clear on one side, but compassion is clear on the other. We have debated extensively." Sarah held Cree closer. Her heart was pounding. "Administrator Vex argues that concordance law requires Cree to enter a preservation facility," Mira continued. "And he is correct. That is what the law says." Sarah felt her hope dying. "However," Mira said, and Sarah's head snapped up, "Captain Rodriguez and Lieutenant Park have presented a valid legal argument. Article 47 does give cultural authority to the last member of a species, and Cree has clearly expressed his choice under what we accept as Vrelnari custom. Furthermore," one of the other judges added, "I have experience with extinct species preservation. My own people were once on the brink. We were treated as specimens, as things to be studied. It nearly destroyed our culture, our spirit, our will to survive." This was Counselor Mira speaking now. Her voice was heavy with emotion. "I know what it is to be the last. To be alone. To be treated as a curiosity rather than a person. I will not allow that to happen to this child." She looked directly at Sarah and Cree. "This tribunal recognizes Cree's right to choose his family under Vrelnari cultural law. We grant custody to Navigator Sarah Chen." The room exploded. Vex was shouting. Captain Rodriguez was smiling. Dr. Yuki was crying. And Sarah was holding Cree, both of them shaking with relief and joy. "This is not over," Vex declared. "I will appeal." "I will take this to the highest courts." "You may appeal," Mira said calmly. "But until then, this decision stands, and I will personally ensure it is enforced." She stood and walked over to Sarah and Cree. She knelt down to Cree's level. "You are very special, little one," she said through the translator. "Not because you are the last Vrelnari, but because you are brave, because you know what matters. Family matters. Love matters. Never forget that." "Cree will not forget," he said. "Thank you for understanding." Mira smiled. Then she looked at Sarah. "There are conditions. You must undergo training in xenoparental care. You must submit to regular check-ins, and you must relocate to a station where Cree can interact with other species, learn, grow, Have a life. I accept all of it, Sarah said immediately. Anything, everything. Good. Mira stood. Then this hearing is concluded. Take care of each other. Back on the Meridian's Hope, the crew celebrated. Everyone was happy. Everyone was relieved. They had done it. They had won. Sarah sat with Cree in her cabin. He was tired from the day. His eyes were heavy, but he was smiling. We stay together? He asked sleepily. We stay together, Sarah confirmed. Always, I promise. Good. Cree yawned. Cree is happy. Me too, Sarah whispered. As Cree fell asleep in her arms, Sarah looked out at the stars. They had fought. They had won. They were a family now. Not by blood. Not by spee. The human sat beside the weeping cub. By morning it slept, holding her hand. Part 5. 3 months passed. Sarah's life changed completely. She left the Meridian's Hope and transferred to Unity Station, a massive space station where dozens of species lived together. It was the perfect place for Cree to grow up. The station was beautiful. It had gardens under glass domes, schools where children from different worlds learned together, markets that smelled of spices from 100 planets. Cree loved it. Sarah's quarters were small but comfortable. She had a bedroom for herself and one for Cree. He had decorated his walls with drawings, pictures of the crew from the Meridian's Hope, pictures of stars. Pictures of Sarah and himself always holding hands. Every morning Sarah took Cree to the station's school. It was run by a kind Tyrellian named Teacher Vaughn. She had 4 arms and gentle eyes. She treated all the children the same, no matter what species they were. At first, the other children stared at Cree. He was different. He was the only Vrelnari any of them had ever seen, some whispered. Some pointed, but Cree handled it with grace. When children asked questions, he answered them. When they wanted to touch his soft fur, he let them, but only if they asked nicely first. When they asked why he looked different, he simply said, Because I am Vrelnari. We are all different. That is good. Soon the children stopped staring. They started playing with Cree instead. He was smart and kind. He shared his toys. He helped others with their work. He made friends easily. Sarah watched him grow more confident every day. He learned quickly. He could speak 5 languages now, including basic human, Tyrellian, and Zeth. He was learning math and science. He loved art most of all. Look, Mama, Cree called one day. He had started calling Sarah Mama a month ago. It had made her cry the first time. Now it made her smile every time. He held up a painting. It showed a beautiful planet with purple skies and silver cities. This is what the teachers say my homeworld looked like, Vrelnar. Do you think it was really this beautiful? Sarah looked at the painting. Her heart ached. I think it was even more beautiful, she said. Because your people were there. Cree was quiet for a moment. Sometimes I try to remember them. My first mother, my first family. But I can't, is that bad? Sarah knelt down and hugged him. No, sweet one. You were very young. It's okay not to remember, but we can learn about them together. We can keep their memory alive. Will you help me? Cree asked. Always. They started a project together. They researched Vrelnari history. They learned about Vrelnari art, music, and stories. They found old recordings of Vrelnari songs. Cree listened to them and cried, but they were good tears. Tears of connection. I can feel them, he said one night. When I hear the music, I feel my people. They're not gone. Not completely. They're here. He touched his chest. In my heart. Sarah's work at the station was fulfilling. She helped coordinate ships arriving and departing. It was less exciting than exploration, but it allowed her to be home every night. To be there for Cree, Captain Rodriguez visited once. The whole crew of the Meridian's Hope came with him. They brought gifts for Cree, books, toys, a model of the ship where they had found him. Cree hugged everyone. You are all my family too, he said. You saved me. You fought for me. Cree loves you. There wasn't a dry eye in the room. Dr. Yuki conducted her regular checkups. Cree was thriving. He had gained weight. His health was excellent. His psychological development was normal, even remarkable given his trauma. He's doing better than I ever hoped, Dr. Yuki told Sarah. The bonding was the right choice. You were the right choice. But not everyone agreed. Administrator Vex had not given up. He sent reports to the Concordance. He argued that Cree should still be moved to a preservation facility. He claimed that Sarah was not properly equipped to preserve Vrelnari culture. Counselor Mira reviewed every report. She visited the station twice. She watched Cree at school. She saw him playing with friends. She saw him laughing. She saw him living. This is what preservation means, she told Vex during one of her visits. Not keeping a specimen in a box, but allowing a culture to live and grow through the people who carry it. Cree is learning about his heritage. He is sharing it with others. That is true preservation. Vex was not convinced, but he had no more legal grounds to stand on. The law had spoken. Cree stayed with Sarah. One evening, Sarah came home tired from work. It had been a long day. She found Cree sitting in the common area with 3 other children. They were from different species. They were all looking at a holographic display. "What are you doing?" Sarah asked. "Cree is teaching us about Vrelnar," one of the children, a young Turellian, said excitedly. "He's showing us Vrelnari art." Sarah watched as Cree explained the patterns in traditional Vrelnari paintings. He talked about the colors and what they meant. He showed them Vrelnari writing. He sang a short Vrelnari song. The other children listened with wonder. They asked questions. Cree answered them all patiently. Sarah felt a wave of pride and sadness. Cree was keeping his culture alive. He was sharing it. It wouldn't die with him. It would live on in the minds of these children, in the art they would make, in the stories they would tell. That night, after the other children left, Cree sat with Sarah on their small balcony. They looked out at the stars. "Mama?" Cree said. "Yes, sweetheart. Thank you for not giving up on me. Thank you for fighting." Sarah pulled him close. "Thank you for choosing me, for letting me be your family." "It was easy to choose," Cree said. "You made Cree feel safe. You made Cree feel loved. That is what family means." 6 months after arriving at Unity Station, a message came for Sarah. It was from the Concordance. She opened it with trembling hands, afraid it was bad news, but it wasn't. It was an invitation. The Concordance wanted Cree to speak at a gathering of species. They wanted him to share his story. They wanted others to learn from what had happened. Sarah showed the message to Cree. "You don't have to do it," she said. "It's your choice." Cree read the message carefully. He was getting very good at reading now. He thought for a long time. "Cree wants to do it," he said finally. "Cree wants to tell them about being alone, about being scared, about finding family. Maybe it will help someone else." "You are so brave," Sarah said. "Cree learned bravery from Mama," he replied with a smile. The gathering was held on the Concordance's main station. Thousands of beings attended, representatives from hundreds of species. Sarah stood backstage with Cree. He looked small in his formal clothes, but he didn't look scared. "Ready?" Sarah asked. "Ready," Cree said. He squeezed her hand. Then he walked onto the stage. The crowd became silent. Everyone wanted to hear what the last Vrelnari would say. Cree stood at the podium. A translator broadcast his words to everyone. "My name is Cree," he began. "I am Vrelnari. I am the last of my people. But I am not alone," he told his story. He told them about waking up in the dark, about the fear, about the loss, about Sarah sitting beside him and humming, about learning to trust, about choosing family. "The Concordance wanted to preserve me," he said, "to keep me safe in a facility, to study me. But that is not preservation. That is a cage." Some beings shifted uncomfortably, but Cree continued. "True preservation is about life, about culture growing and changing, about sharing stories, about teaching others. I preserve my people every time I speak their language, every time I paint in their style, every time I teach a friend about Vrelnar." He looked out at the crowd. "I am the last Vrelnari by blood, but my culture will not die, because I will share it, because my family will help me keep it alive, because we choose to remember." Then he said something that made Sarah's heart swell with pride. "My mother is human. My family is many species. But we are all family because we chose each other, because we love each other. That is the most important thing I learned. Family is not about blood. It is about heart." The crowd was silent for a moment. Then someone started clapping. Then another. Then another. Soon the entire hall was filled with applause. Cree walked off the stage and straight into Sarah's arms. She held him tight. "You did it," she whispered. "You were perfect." "We did it, Mama," Cree corrected. Together. After the speech, many beings approached them. They thanked Cree. They shared their own stories of loss and family. They talked about how his words had moved them. Even Administrator Vex came. He stood stiffly in front of Cree. You spoke well, he said. It was the closest thing to an apology he could manage. Thank you, Cree replied graciously. Counselor Mira embraced Sarah. You saved him, she said. Not just his body. His spirit, his hope. You gave him a future. He saved me too, Sarah said. He taught me what really matters. That night, back in their quarters on Unity Station, Sarah and Cree sat together in the dim light. Cree was tired but happy. Mama, he said sleepily. Yes, my love. Cree is not sad anymore. About being the last. Because Cree has you, and everyone at school. And the crew from the ship. Cree has so much family now. Sarah kissed his forehead. And we will always have each other. Always, Cree agreed. His eyes closed. His breathing became soft and even. Sarah watched him sleep. This small being who had lost everything, who had survived against impossible odds, who had chosen to hope, to love. To live, he was not just The medical bay of the rescue ship was clean and white and felt completely wrong. Sarah lay on a bed while doctors worked on her injuries. They said she would be fine. Full recovery expected, but she felt hollow inside. Empty. Through the window she could see the planet below, green and beautiful and holding everyone she loved. The doctors wanted to leave immediately. Get her to a proper hospital. But she had begged for one more day. Just one more day to say goodbye properly. Dr. Tanaka had agreed. More than that, she had listened to Sarah's story, watched the videos, studied the documentation. Then she had made calls. Lots of calls. To scientific authorities, to government officials, to anyone who would listen. The Cubs had not left. Even now they sat outside the ship. Sarah could see them through the window. Echo, shadow, bright. They refused to move. Their parents stood guard beside them, waiting. The rescue team had tried to scare them away. The predators had simply stared at the humans with patient, intelligent eyes. They were not leaving. Not until Sarah did. Tanaka came into the medical bay carrying a tablet. Her face showed carefully controlled excitement. Dr. Chen, you need to see this. The preliminary analysis of your documentation is complete. Every expert who has reviewed it agrees. Your friends down there meet every criterion for sapient status. Every single one. Sarah's heart leaped. So they're protected? Emergency protection status has been granted, Tanaka said. The planet is now a restricted zone. No unauthorized landings. No exploitation. A formal first contact team is being assembled. They'll be here within the month. Tears ran down Sarah's face. Thank you. Thank you so much. Don't thank me, Tanaka said gently. Thank yourself. Your documentation was perfect. Your observations were professional and thorough. You gave us everything we needed to make the case. You saved them, Dr. Chen. In more ways than one. Sarah wiped her eyes. Can I see them? Before we go, I need to say goodbye. Tanaka smiled. Actually, I had something else in mind. How would you feel about staying? Being part of the first contact team? You already know these people. You speak some of their language. You have their trust. We need you here if you're willing. Sarah sat up so fast the medical equipment beeped in alarm. Stay? I can stay? Not permanently. Not at first. You need proper medical treatment. But after that? Yes. You can come back as humanity's ambassador to this species, if that's what you want, what she wanted. Sarah almost laughed. What she wanted was sitting outside the ship right now, waiting for her. Yes, absolutely yes, they let her go outside. Sarah walked slowly down the ramp. Her legs still hurt, but she did not care. The Cubs saw her and their scales blazed with light. They ran to her, nearly knocking her over. She fell to her knees and held all three of them. Echo pressed against her chest. Shadow wrapped around her back. Bright climbed into her lap. They made happy chirping sounds and their scales pulsed with colors that needed no translation. Joy, relief, love. Sentinel and Guardian approached. Both adults touched their heads to Sarah's. Shoulders in the gesture she now knew meant family, pack, belonging. Sarah reached up and touched their massive heads in return. She showed them patterns with her light. Patterns the Cubs had taught her. I must go, but I will return. We are family. Always family, Sentinel's scales flickered. The adult showed a complex pattern. Sarah struggled to understand it. Then Echo showed a simpler version. Mother who saved. Returns. We wait. We remember. Sarah broke down crying. She held the Cubs tight. I promise. I promise I'll come back. Just a little while. Just long enough to get better. Then I'll come home." The cubs did not understand the words, but they understood her heart. They pressed closer, trying to comfort her. Tanaka gave her as much time as she needed. Finally, when the sun began to set, Sarah had to go. The medical team needed to get her to a hospital. Her injuries required more treatment than the ship could provide. She kissed each cub on the head and stood on shaking legs. The walk back to the ship was the hardest thing she had ever done. Every step felt wrong. The cubs followed her to the ramp. They sat there as she climbed inside. Even as the door closed, she could see them through the window, waiting, watching. The ship lifted off. Sarah pressed her hand against the window. Below, the cubs' scales flashed bright patterns. "Goodbye. Return soon. We love you." Sarah flashed her light back through the window. "I love you too. I will return. Family. Always family." 6 months later, Sarah stepped off a shuttle onto a proper landing pad that had been built in the jungle clearing. She was healed now, stronger than before, and ready to come home. The first contact team had been working carefully with the local population, learning their language, building trust, establishing peaceful relations. It was going well, better than anyone had hoped. But Sarah's return was special. Word had spread through the predator community. The one they called Soft Walker Who Heals was coming back. The one who saved the cubs. The one who proved humans could be trusted. As Sarah walked down the ramp, she saw them. Echo had grown, nearly adult-sized now. Shadow was larger still. Bright had the brightest scale patterns of any predator Sarah had seen. They stood at the edge of the landing pad, scales pulsing with barely contained excitement. Sarah started walking faster. Then running. Her leg did not hurt anymore. She could run. The cubs saw her running and charged. They met in the middle of the pad in a collision of scales and fur and tears and joy. The cubs were so big now, but they pressed against her just like when they were small, making the same happy chirping sounds. Their scales blazed with patterns. Mother who saved, returned, joy, home. Sarah held them as tight as she could. "I told you I'd come back. I told you." Behind them, Sentinel and Guardian approached. The adults moved with dignity now. They were leaders in their community, important, respected. But when they reached Sarah, they lowered their heads and touched her shoulders just like before. Family, pack, welcome home. The entire local community had gathered, dozens of predators watching this reunion. Sarah looked around at them all. These were not animals to be feared. They were people. A civilization with its own language, culture, and values. People who had welcomed a lost human into their family. Dr. Tanaka stood nearby with the rest of the first contact team. She was smiling. "Welcome back, Ambassador Chen. Your family missed you." Ambassador? Sarah liked the sound of that. She was not just a scientist anymore. She was a bridge between two species, a translator of hearts, a proof that kindness could cross any divide. That evening, Sarah sat with the cubs under the stars just like old times. They were bigger now, nearly adults. But they still curled up around her, still sought her comfort, still loved her with that pure, unconditional love that knew no boundaries of species or form. The humans had learned so much in the past 6 months. The predators called themselves the Lurith. They had complex social structures, art music made with their light patterns, history passed down through generations. They were everything Sarah had believed they were and more. And humanity had learned something important too. Intelligence did not look like them. It did not think like them. But it could still recognize compassion, still respond to kindness, still choose to protect those who were helpless. The cubs had waited outside the clinic when Sarah was dying. They had stood guard over her bed, not because of training, not because of instinct, but because she had saved them. Because she had shown them that some creatures would help even when it cost them everything. That lesson had spread. The Lurith now knew that not all humans were like Torres, that there were good people in the galaxy. People who would dig bleeding hands into the earth to save children. People who would fight authorities and risk everything to protect the innocent. Echo showed Sarah a new pattern, one the cub had created. It was complex and beautiful. Sarah studied it carefully, trying to understand. Then it clicked. The pattern meant hope, the hope that came from seeing kindness in unexpected places. The hope that the galaxy was full of people who would choose to save rather than harm. The hope that differences could become bridges instead of walls. Sarah showed her own pattern back. A pattern she had been working on for months. It meant the same thing in human terms: hope, connection, family across the stars. The universal truth that love recognized love no matter what form it took. The cub's scales blazed with joy. They understood. They had always understood. From the moment Sarah had started digging them out of that collapsed burrow, they had known. This was someone who cared. This was someone worth protecting. This was family. Around them, the Lurith community watched. They saw their youth pressed close to a human. They saw Sentinel and Guardian accepting this alien as pack. They saw the future. A future where two species learned from each other, protected each other, grew together. It had started with 3 cubs trapped in the dark, with a wounded human who could not walk away from suffering, with bloodied hands and broken legs and the simple choice to help. Now it was something more. It was proof that humanity's greatest strength was not their technology or their weapons. It was their stubborn, illogical, beautiful refusal to leave children in danger, their ability to see worth in any life, their capacity to build bridges of compassion across the vast emptiness between the stars.